What's going on, everybody? DSS here, and I just wanted to throw together a quick video showcasing how you can bypass the warning zones in Final Fantasy VII Remake. The purpose of this video is to get this information out there for anyone who may want to look into this themselves, showing that it is possible as well as how to do it with some visual aid, which is why I have my inputs on the screen right there, just in case there's any confusion in that regard. As well as I'll be showing off maybe a cool thing or two towards the end. We'll see. So with that being said, let's hop into it. In every warning zone there is a trigger, and when you come into contact with that trigger, the game automatically makes Cloud try to exit the warning zone to get you back on track for the main scenario, or simply to keep you in bounds if there is nothing beyond that warning section. So the concept for making it past that trigger is the same for all warning zones, though it might require one extra step depending on what Cloud does when you come into contact with that trigger. But I'm going to show you how to deal with both. This one is the easier of the two scenarios that you could get. In this scenario, you'll notice that when Cloud comes into contact with the trigger, he stops momentarily, then he turns around and automatically starts walking towards the exit of the trigger. And the other example that I'm going to show you after this one, instead of having that brief pause before he tries to exit, he'll just immediately turn around and walk towards the exit. So your goal is simple. All you want to do is be running when you come into contact with that trigger. Though it's easier said than done, because if you notice, whenever I'm walking in the direction of where that trigger is, I'm not allowed to run. It's really easy to tell when you're able to run or not, because if you are jogging, then you can hold on to the run button and you'll start running. But notice how pretty much anything that's remotely in the direction of where that trigger is, Cloud is going to walk. However, once I'm even like slightly facing away from it, like even here, you'll notice that he's jogging. So what you're going to want to do is get as close to the trigger as possible, have Cloud start running, and then you're going to want to try to make that sharp turn into the trigger. Now, sometimes it takes me a couple of attempts to get it. The more you do it, the more comfortable you will become with it. But I'm just gonna cut to an attempt where I get it done properly, just to show you what it looks like, and we'll go from there. But for reference, I tend to try to use any landmarks on the ground or maybe even on the wall in some scenarios where the camera might be finicky. And then after that, just gonna turn to the left. Now you'll notice every time that I flick left, that Cloud immediately moves. When he immediately moves, that means that he would either start jogging or running if you're holding on to the run button. So from this point, I'm going to hold on to the run button, and then I'm going to hold on to left on the analog stick, and he's going to start running. Now once he starts running, at this point I'm going to hold down on the analog stick, because that's in the direction of where the trigger is. And if all goes well, Cloud should maintain this momentum and make it on the other side of the trigger. And hey, what do you know? I got it first try. I didn't even have to cut away. I probably won't be that fortunate on the other example that I show, but yeah, there you go. Now I do want to point out that I have a rather lengthy video in regards to bypassing the warning zones for chapter 4, and I'll try to upload that video not too long after this video goes live on YouTube. But for now, let's head over to chapter 8 so I can showcase what to do when you encounter the other scenario that you can encounter when trying to bypass these warning zones. So here we have a warning zone where when Cloud touches the trigger, that makes him exit the warning zone, he moves immediately instead of having that momentary pause like he did in the previous example. The reason why that's problematic is because when I run into the trigger, instead of running through it, Cloud will begin to run away from it because he immediately takes action towards leaving the area instead of giving it a little bit of time before it takes over and causes him to make any sudden change in direction. There is a way around that, however, because you will notice that when Cloud is facing more to the right, he turns to the right, and when he's facing more to the left, he turns to the left. This is not always true though. For this trigger in particular, if you approach it on the left side, even though Cloud is facing to the left, he will turn to the right. And what that means is that if you run into the trigger and hit that point of it, then he will turn right, effectively making him run straight, which will allow you to run through the trigger as you did in the previous example. So let's set that up and move on from there. Okay, I think this is good. Let's find out. And there you go. So as you can see, I made it past the trigger. Now I did mention at the beginning of the video that I was going to show off a cool thing or two, and I'm going to show you two things, and they are related to each other. Even though this is chapter 8, the trigger that loads up the collapsed passageway and wall market do exist in chapter 8. And let me show you. So if I run over here to make my way, you will notice that changes begin to happen. It is actually pretty cool because you can see everything deloading, and you can see it changing from daytime to nighttime, and the models loading in, the textures loading in. So you can see wall market in the back over there. It's all pretty cool. There actually is some dialogue that loads up that you normally hear in chapter 9 as well, even though Eric isn't, nearby at the moment. Some cutscenes do work, some cutscenes do not work. There's much to look into in that regard, but we'll visit those things with time. Now, as for the other cool thing that I wanted to show you, here it is. While I was checking out the collapsed passageway and wall market while being in chapter 8, I came across a series of events that causes your characters to stay in a battle state at all times, even when you're in areas where enemy encounters don't normally occur, as you can currently see. So I have Cloud running around, can do his string of attacks, you can change modes, you can even bring up the tactical mode, and you can switch characters, activate limit. Pretty much in a battle state, anything that you could normally do in a battle you can do now because that's what you're in. You're in a battle state. So I just want to show that this is a thing. I definitely plan on looking into this a lot more in the very near future, and I also plan on showing you all how I even got into this state in the first place, as well as showing y'all any other cool things that I may come across while checking out what lies beyond these warning zones and what have you. But anyway, that's going to conclude my video. I hope you found it to be informative and entertaining. And yeah, take it easy. Until next time, peace out.